Every night, around 10:37 p.m., her phone would light up with his name. Noah. Always Noah. It had become as routine as brushing her teeth, as natural as pulling the blanket over her shoulders. The sound of his voice, warm and playful, filled the empty corners of her apartment. And for a while, that was enough. Maya wasn't someone who rushed things. She had been through enough relationships built on illusions to know that slow was better. So when she and Noah matched on Hinge, and he insisted from the start that he wasn't into games, that he was looking for something real, she believed him. Or maybe she needed to believe him. Their first few calls lasted for hours. He spoke about his startup job, his love for old jazz, and how most women didn't appreciate conversations anymore. He said Maya was different. She listened. She understood. And she laughed like someone who hadn't been broken yet. He never pushed for anything physical. In fact, he said he wanted to take things slowly, that he respected her time and her space, that in a world of rushed hookups, what they had was rare. That felt good. Maya had heard the lines before, but Noah said them differently, like he meant them. She started rearranging her evenings just to be present when he called. Declined dinner invites, turned down Netflix nights with friends. Noah had a way of making the world disappear, just his voice in her ear, telling her about his day, asking about hers, making her laugh. Even when the connection dropped, he always called back, but what she didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that Noah wasn't alone in his apartment when he spoke to her. Not even close. Noah lived in a quiet residential neighborhood, in a townhouse he shared with another woman. Her name was Camille. Camille was not just a roommate. She wasn't a cousin. She wasn't a friend who had fallen on hard times and needed a place to stay. Camille was his partner, had been for almost 4 years. They shared furniture, finances, and a fragile silence that hung heavy between them in the evenings. By the time Noah met Maya online, things with Camille had grown cold, but not non-existent. They no longer kissed goodnight, but they still attended weddings together, shared holiday cards, smiled in photos. Noah had convinced himself that the relationship was basically over. He just hadn't told Camille yet, and he definitely hadn't told Maya. Most nights, Camille would fall asleep early after her nursing shifts. That gave Noah the space to step into the living room, phone in hand, and call Maya like she was his only world. He would sit on the couch in the dark, whispering jokes and dreams, carefully lowering his voice if Camille stirred in the bedroom. Once or twice, Maya asked about background noises, a drawer closing, water running, a distant door creak. "Just my neighbor," he'd say with a laugh. "He's loud at night, drives me crazy." Maya believed him because Noah made it easy to believe. One Friday, after a particularly sweet call, Maya found herself humming one of the songs Noah had sent her. She sat on the edge of her bed, phone still warm in her hand, heart full. He had told her about a small cabin upstate he used to visit with his family, how he wanted to go back someday, maybe take someone special. She had never seen him in person, but in her mind, he was already hers. They hadn't met yet, 5 weeks of daily calls, and still no date. But he had reasons. First, it was work. Then a sudden trip to visit his mother who'd fallen ill. Then a deadline. Then COVID. Concerns Maya didn't push. He was so attentive otherwise. He asked about her migraines. He remembered her friend's name from that awkward dinner she mentioned once. He even sent her a voice note when she felt too anxious to sleep. The delay in meeting almost made it feel more romantic, like they were building something rare in a world too eager to rush into the physical. But somewhere deep in her gut, Maya began to feel it. That subtle weight in the silence between his words. The way he always called, but never texted first. The way his voice changed whenever she brought up us. The next morning, Maya sat in her favorite coffee shop, staring at her phone screen like it held secrets she hadn't yet unlocked. Noah had texted her late the night before, as he always did after their calls. "Sleep well, Em. I love these nights." 3 sentences. Sweet. Casual. Almost rehearsed. She used to melt at messages like that. But now, they lingered in her chest like something unfinished. There was a pattern forming, one she hadn't wanted to see. Every interaction with Noah followed a rhythm that never changed. The late calls, the warm words, the gentle avoidance of anything real. Whenever she suggested meeting, he would change the subject gracefully, with a joke or a compliment that made her forget she was being dismissed. But the questions had begun to echo louder than his answers. Why was a man who claimed to care so deeply so reluctant to share space with her in the real world? Why did intimacy only live on the phone? Later that day, Maya decided to test something small. Nothing confrontational, just a shift in rhythm. She texted Noah at 3:14 p.m., a time she knew he was usually offline. "Thinking of you. Hope your day's not too crazy." She expected nothing urgent. Maybe a reply in an hour, 2 at most. But 5 hours passed. Then 8. No response. At 10:38 p.m. sharp, her phone rang. His name lit up the screen, just like always. But this time, instead of answering immediately, she let it ring twice. She wanted to feel in control of something. When she finally picked up, Noah sounded breathless, like he had run to make the call. "Hey, I missed you today. Sorry I couldn't." "Text? It was back-to-back meetings," he said. His voice was calm, tender, the kind of tone that always soothed her doubts. But now, it made her more suspicious. He didn't ask about her day. He didn't mention her text. And Maya, smiling through the phone, felt the edges of her trust start to fray. That night, she couldn't sleep. Her thoughts kept circling around. The call. Not because of what was said, but because of what wasn't. She scrolled back through their message history. Hundreds of words, dozens of voice notes, but very few photos. No selfies, no apartment shots, no glimpses of the world he claimed to be living in. Most people Maya had dated couldn't resist sending casual snaps. A desk cluttered with work papers, a photo of their dinner, a silly moment caught in traffic. But Noah was different. Every piece of him that Maya had access to was filtered through words. There were no real-world anchors, no time-stamped evidence that proved his stories. He existed in voice and text, not in space. She thought about the background sounds during their calls. A clink of glass, a muffled laugh, the occasional sound of a closing door. He always dismissed them as neighbors, a noisy street, or the TV left on in another room. But now she began to piece together the inconsistencies. Once she had heard a woman's voice, faint but distinct. Noah laughed it off. "My sister's visiting, she's loud. You'd love her." But when she later asked about his family, he said he was an only child. Maya had brushed it off, thinking maybe she misheard. But now those small contradictions felt heavier, sharper, like tiny splinters she had been collecting without realizing it. The next weekend, Maya met with her best friend Lena, someone who had been quietly skeptical of Noah from the beginning. They sat across from each other, at a dimly lit bar, the kind where conversations are swallowed by jazz and candlelight. Maya laid it all out. The late-night calls, the avoidance of photos, the excuses. Lena didn't interrupt. She just listened, nodding slowly, her fingers wrapped around a glass of gin. When Maya finally stopped talking, Lena asked just one question. "Do you actually know where he lives?" Maya blinked. She had never thought to ask. She only knew he lived uptown near the park, vague enough to be meaningless. She realized that in 5 weeks of daily contact, she didn't even have his last name saved. Lena pulled out her phone. "Give me a minute," she said. 10 minutes later, after a few search combinations, she found something. A company LinkedIn page where Noah had left a comment matched to the same photo he used on Hinge. That led to a company Instagram, then a team outing photo. In the background, barely visible but unmistakable, was Noah with his arm around a woman, not a coworker. Hug. A waist-level hold, intimate and natural. The caption said, "Team dinner with families. We made it through Q4 together." The post was 2 weeks old. Maya stared at the screen. Her chest felt hollow, like her lungs had stepped out of her body. There was no denying it now. Noah wasn't just slow to commit. He wasn't conflicted. He was lying, blatantly, publicly, and she wasn't even his secret. She was a storyline he crafted outside of his real life. Lena looked at her carefully. "What do you want to do?" Maya didn't answer. She didn't know yet, but something inside her had shifted. The girl, who waited by the phone every night, was gone. What remained now was a woman holding the weight of a truth she never asked for. The day after Lena showed her the photo, Maya didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't even text Noah. There was something oddly numbing about seeing the truth so clearly. Her heart didn't race. It slowed, like her body knew that if it reacted too quickly, she'd break apart. She spent the morning pacing her apartment, replaying every conversation with Noah through a new lens. The "I miss you" messages, the silences between his jokes, the nights she felt alone but didn't dare admit it, thinking it would make her seem needy. It wasn't just that he lied. It was that she had felt the lie and still chose to believe something softer. That was the part that stung the most. Not his deception, but her own silence. She opened their chat history and scrolled without reading, letting her thumb flick past weeks of digital affection like a flipbook of a relationship that never existed. Her eyes landed on a voice message he had sent 5 days ago. She pressed play. "You make me feel like I can start over," he had said. "I don't think I've ever had that with anyone." The tone was so convincing. She could almost picture him on the other end, lying on his couch, saying it with closed eyes. And maybe he had meant it. Maybe he did feel something. But whatever that something was, it had lived in the shadows of his reality. Maya had only ever been a flashlight flickering on someone else's stage. That evening, Noah called, right on schedule. Maya let the phone ring until voicemail. He called again, then sent a message. "Is everything okay? Been thinking about you all day." She stared at those words for a long time. What did "thinking about you" even mean to a man who slept beside someone else? What value did that thought hold if it never translated into honesty? She began to type, then erased it. Again. Her fingers trembled, not from sadness, but from the weight of choosing how this would end. Because endings matter. They mark who we were when we finally stopped pretending. She opened his Instagram, the one he had told her he rarely used. He had posted nothing recent, but the tag history told a different story. A woman named Camille had tagged him in several posts over the past few months. Dinner outings, sunsets, even a holiday cabin trip. In one, Noah was seated at a long table, beside Camille, his hand resting on her thigh. The caption read, "Home is wherever we are." Maya felt like she was watching her own erasure in real time. While she waited by the phone, he had been living a life she wasn't even a footnote in. No mention, no trace, just a woman dreaming of a man who belonged to another world. Instead of confronting him that night, Maya did something else. Something she didn't expect. She called Camille. She found Camille's number through a mutual tag on a bakery's post. The two had apparently celebrated her birthday there. She hesitated for almost 20 minutes before pressing call. Her voice shook on the first word. "Hi, you don't know me, but I think we should talk." Camille didn't hang up. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She listened. Her voice was calm, low, tired. As Maya explained, There was no shock in Camille's silence, just a heaviness, like someone who had always suspected the truth but never had the proof to name it. Camille asked a few questions. When did you meet? How long? Did he ever mention me? Maya answered everything. She had nothing left to hide. When she finished, Camille sighed. I guess part of me always knew, she said. But knowing and seeing are different. Thank you for telling me. There was no drama, no revenge plotted. Just two women who had been orbiting the same lie, finally staring at each other across the void it had created. After they hung up, Maya sat alone in the dark, phone resting beside her. There was no sense of victory, no closure, just clarity. She had done what felt right. Not for him, not even for Camille, for herself. Because she had spent too many nights letting someone else decide how much of her deserved honesty. That era had ended. The night after she called Camille, Maya didn't wait for Noah's voice. For the first time in weeks, she turned off the ringer on her phone and placed it face down on her nightstand. She didn't want to hear his excuses, his improvisations, or his emotionally poetic way of turning guilt into romance. She didn't want to be soothed into silence again. Instead, she sat by the window in her apartment, the city pulsing quietly outside, and let herself sit in the stillness of knowing. It was both lonely and liberating. The kind of loneliness that doesn't beg to be filled, just acknowledged. That night she didn't dream of him. She dreamed of water, vast, quiet, endless. And in the dream, she was floating, finally, not reaching for anyone's hand. The next morning, her phone had 3 missed calls, 2 messages, 1 voicemail. She didn't listen. A part of her was curious, of course. She imagined what he might have said. Probably confusion, probably concern laced with denial. He might even try to shift the blame, suggest she misunderstood something or found an old photo or misread a situation. But Maya had stepped beyond the place where words could reshape what her eyes had already seen. She deleted the voicemail before it could tempt her. She didn't need another performance. She had seen the whole play, and the curtain had already fallen. At work, she was quieter than usual. Her co-workers noticed. Her manager offered her a lighter load. Maya declined. She needed the structure. The meetings, the spreadsheets, even the office gossip. It all helped re-anchor her to a reality that wasn't built on illusion. The hardest part of heartbreak, she realized, wasn't losing the person. It was losing the version of herself that believed in the person. Rebuilding trust wasn't just about trusting others. It was about learning to trust her own intuition again. Meanwhile, Noah was unraveling. Camille hadn't said much after Maya's call, but she didn't need to. Her silence had volume. The next morning, she didn't make coffee for 2. She didn't kiss him on the cheek. She sat at the kitchen table with her laptop, eyes red, hands calm, and asked, "How long have you been calling her?" Noah froze. There was no clever line that would fix this. No half-truth elegant enough to soften it. He started to stammer, something about confusion, about things getting complicated. But Camille raised her hand. "Don't lie to me twice," she said. That was it. No shouting, no drama, just a door closing somewhere deep in the foundation of their home. He spent the day trying to text Maya, but his words kept failing. Every draft felt hollow. What could he even say that wouldn't insult her intelligence or disrespect the damage he'd caused? He had told himself he wasn't a bad guy, that his connection with Maya had been real, that it was just bad timing. But now he was watching 2 women walk away from him, one with quiet fury, the other with quiet grace. And for the first time in a long time, Noah felt the weight of his own emptiness. That weekend, Maya went for a walk by the river. It was cold, and the wind carried a certain sharpness, but she didn't mind. She had spent too many nights indoors, curled around a phone that offered warmth but not presence. She watched couples pass by, laughing, arguing, holding hands. Real people, real lives. For a moment, she allowed herself to feel jealous, not because she wanted what they had, but because she had been pretending she did have it. And pretending is exhausting. She sat on a bench and pulled out a small notepad from her coat. It was something she hadn't touched in months. Writing had always been her way of processing, but with Noah, she had stopped. Maybe because writing forced honesty, and honesty would have exposed the cracks too early. She began to write, not a letter to him, but to herself. A promise, a quiet reclamation. She wrote, "I forgive you for falling for the voice. I forgive you for wanting it to be real. But I won't let you forget what it felt like to wake up from the lie." When she finished, she tore the page out, folded it neatly, and placed it inside her pocket. Not to send, not to keep. Just to remind herself later, on days when the loneliness might creep back, that she had survived the worst kind of heartbreak, the one that makes you question your own reality. 2 weeks later, Maya's apartment no longer felt haunted. The corners where she once waited for his calls no longer held their breath. The silence she used to dread had softened into something gentle. Not empty, but open. She hadn't spoken to Noah since the day she called Camille. There had been no dramatic goodbye, no final monologue, just absence, just stillness. And in that quiet, Maya began to rebuild. It started small, rearranging furniture, changing her bed sheets, buying a different kind of coffee. Actions that seemed mundane but meant everything. Each choice was a quiet act of defiance against who she had been while she waited on someone else's love to feel real. She returned to therapy, a place she had once visited inconsistently, but now embraced like oxygen. Her therapist, a calm-eyed woman with a gift for asking questions that stuck in the ribs, asked her, "Do you think you missed him? Or just the version of yourself you imagined he saw?" Maya didn't answer right away, because the truth was, she missed both. She missed the woman she was when she felt chosen, even if it was by a ghost. She missed believing that connection was simple. Just two people who liked each other enough to try. But now she knew better. Now she knew that love, when real, doesn't hide. It doesn't fear the light. It doesn't require pretending. That realization didn't arrive with fireworks. It settled slowly like a season shifting. One morning Maya woke up and didn't reach for her phone. She didn't wonder if Noah had called. She didn't feel anger or sadness, just calm. It was the first time his name didn't surface with the sunrise. Across the city, Camille had moved out. She didn't leave in a rush or with slammed doors. She packed her things carefully, methodically. She left behind the wine glasses they had, bought together, but took the books she loved, the kitchen tools she actually used, and the photo albums, not of them, but of her childhood. She left Noah a note, nothing poetic, just a few lines. "You lied, and I let you. We're both better than this, but we didn't act like it. I'm leaving now because I'm choosing to be someone I recognize again." She didn't wait for a response. Some closures aren't built through conversations. They're built through exits. Noah tried to reach out to Maya once more. He sent a message one afternoon. Something long, self-reflective, probably rehearsed a dozen times before hitting send. Maya saw it. She read the first few lines. Then, without anger or fanfare, she deleted it. Not out of cruelty, out of clarity. What she had to say had already been lived. She didn't owe him more words. The final chapter had been written not in texts, but in choices. And her choice was silence. A month later, Maya found herself on a train heading to a weekend retreat. Something spontaneous she had signed up for after seeing a flyer in her local cafe. It was a writing retreat, not romantic, not about healing, just words and silence and strangers. It felt right. On the second day, during a group prompt, they were asked to write about the moment that changed everything but looked like nothing. Maya smiled. She thought back to the night she didn't answer his call. That quiet defiance, that stillness, that was the moment. Not the photo, not the call with Camille, not even the final voicemail. Just the act of letting it ring, and, not reaching back. She wrote it all down, not as a victim, not even as someone broken, but as someone who had been forced to listen to herself again. When she read it aloud, the room was quiet. A woman next to her reached out, squeezed her hand. No words, just connection. Real connection. The kind that doesn't need performance. That night, Maya walked outside under the trees and looked up. The stars were ordinary. The night was cold. Nothing dramatic happened. But inside her something had settled. A sense that this chapter was truly closed. Not with bitterness, but with understanding. Noah wasn't a monster, just a mirror. One that cracked, and in its breaking, showed her how much of herself she had been ignoring. Back home, she placed a note on her desk. The one she had written by the river. She unfolded it, reread the words. "I forgive you for falling for the voice." She smiled, then added a line beneath it. "And I thank you for finally listening to your own." She didn't frame it, didn't share it online, just left it there. A quiet reminder that even the softest decisions, like not answering a call, can echo for a lifetime.